Ready when you are.
Okay. A cage. To stay behind bars until use and old age accept them, and all chance of doing great deeds is gone beyond recall or desire. So said Eowyn when asked in the Return of the King's movie what she fears most. Now, if you don't know who Eowyn is, or you don't know what the Lord of the Rings are, you can leave, go watch the movies, read the books, come back, I'll give the speech again, we'll all get credit, we'll live happily ever after. But the movies are far more important to your education than my speech, trust me. Okay, so Shirley Chisholm would have liked Eowyn's quote very much because she felt the same way, that women were put in boxes, put away in the attic, and not allowed to make a difference in the world. Shirley Chisholm was a U.S. House of Representatives member in 1968, and in fact she was the first African-American woman to hold that position in office. And she gave a speech called Equal Rights for Women a few months after she took office. The historical background to the speech is really interesting, and it gives a lot of information about what Shirley Chisholm was saying and why she said it. And her impact, the speech's impact, was due to the fact of where she gave it, why she gave it, and who she gave it to. In her speech, she presented an exact problem and a solution. So she presented it to her audience so they would know what she was talking about. I wanted you to see what Shirley Chisholm looked like. She was fabulous. All right, so the historical background. Up until Shirley Chisholm took office, women had been able to accomplish a few things. In the early 19th century, the 19th Amendment had given women the right to vote. And during the World War II era, women were able to pick up the jobs that the men left vacant when they went off to war. And during this time, women were able to realize, you know what? We are able to do these jobs even though people say we can't, and heck if we're not doing a pretty darn good job of it. So when the men came back, they weren't all that willing to give up the job they had started. And in fact, Chisholm herself was part of this timeline because she was the first African-American woman to be a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. Chisholm's impact was due to the decisive way she chose to give her speech, where she gave it. She gave it in the U.S. House of Representatives in a place that would receive national attention. So obviously, you're going to get a lot of media attention if you give it in front of really important people. Also, who she gave it to. She gave it to men and women who would be able to take her ideas and put them into law, who would put them into practice and use them to make a difference. And when she gave it a few months into office. Chisholm was an African-American woman, so obviously she had a lot of enemies, not only in Congress, but all over the country. So she gave people a few months to get used to her, to realize, okay, she is an African-American woman, but she knows what she's doing, she's a professional, so they were able to take her ideas and actually look at her ideas and not who was giving the ideas. So Shirley gave her problem, the discrimination of women, and you can see in the picture. A headquarters for the National Association opposed to women's suffrage. It's a problem in itself. Men were not interested in women having the right to vote, in having jobs, any of that. Shirley Chisholm said women deserve the right to vote, they deserve, which they already had of course, they deserve equal pay, and they deserve to be able to hold the same jobs as men. Women, if they had jobs, did not receive equal pay for the jobs, and they did not have any managerial positions. They did not have positions that were fulfilling for them in and of themselves. And in this picture, I realize that the picture is for women who were taking on men-only jobs, but this is the only real good picture I could find for it. So some jobs were advertised as for men only. Women weren't even allowed to apply for these men-only jobs. So she went right into her solution. She said, you know, we need an Equal Rights Amendment. Now, this amendment had been penned earlier in the century by Alice Paul, and it had been distributed to all 50 states, but not all the states had ratified them yet. And Shirley Chisholm stood up and she said, you know what, we need to take it upon ourselves to do this, and we need to make this amendment go into the Constitution. This Equal Rights Amendment would give both women and African Americans the right to hold the same types of jobs. Both Aowen and Shirley Chisholm were two women who were far ahead of their times. Don't laugh, but you already knew this. They were both afraid to be put into boxes and put in places where they were not allowed to make a difference and speak their minds like they wanted to. Shirley's impact was due to the fact she chose strategically where she wanted to give her speech, when she wanted to give it, and who she wanted to give it to. The historical background leading up to her speech shows what made her say what she did, why she worded things the way she did, and all the things that I mentioned before. Now, you have heard my speech. Your assignment is to go home and watch The Lord of the Rings, because it promotes equal rights for women, and because Legolas is fabulous, but mostly because it promotes equal rights for women. Thank you.